Hey there, happy day 21 of the Get Up and Go Challenge. Get up and go. Sharon Horne-Ellstrom here. And we're going to do what I wanted to do yesterday because it feels more appropriate today than it did yesterday. It's all about defining it. What is it? Not necessarily it, but defining everything. One of the biggest lessons I've learned in my life, and it's been a long life, is that we personally, each and every one of us individually, get to, we don't have, well, we have to and we must, but we also get to, because it's a privilege, define what everything means to us and in our life, what everything means. We get to define and decide what every experience, past, present, and future, means to us, what we define it as. We get to define what every word means. And as human beings, we have common understandings of certain things like money, right? We all know what money is, but we get to decide individually, what does money mean to us? And that's a pretty loaded one for a lot of people, me included. Money means something different to each and every one of us. For some people, money means freedom. For some people, money means status. For some people, money means lack and scarcity. For other people, money means abundance. But each and every one of us individually, based on our experiences, based on our past, based on who we are and what we want and what we desire and how we feel about different things, decide and define and determine what absolutely everything in our life means. We can take a past experience and we can blow it up and have it actually destroy our entire life. Or we can look at that same past experience and we can decide to change the meaning of what it means to us going forward in our life, and that can actually be the thing. That same terrible traumatic event can be the thing that propels us to reach our greatest potential. It's up to us. And when we realize we have that power and that ability to decide and determine and define what everything means, it's kind of exciting, right? It's pretty overwhelming, but it's kind of exciting. And you realize that you have a lot more control than you ever believed that you did or that you ever thought was possible. So today we are going to talk a little bit about emergencies. And life is not an emergency. In the little book, Don't Sweat the Small Stuff workbook, there's an activity called Life is Not an Emergency. And it says, repeat to yourself, life is not an emergency. And I will take a picture of this and share it in the comments below so that you can do this activity. You can do it if you want, you don't have to. I'm always going to recommend that you do it, right? If there's something that you can do and you can take a self-audit and ask yourself, what does this mean to me? How do I respond to this? It's always going to move you forward, right? Maybe not right now, but maybe, 2 years down the road, you're going to be like, oh my God, I remember taking that life isn't an emergency thing. I'm facing this same situation. This is how I thought I would deal with it back then. But now, 2 years later, I've been through the COVID-19 pandemic. This is how I'm going to deal with this situation. It's not really that big of an emergency, right? And it asks, I believe it asks, gives 3 scenarios based on a different situation. One's like getting stuck in traffic, and there are just 10 of them, and then you score yourself and you can read it and do it. It's a fun activity. I'm going to do it too because I haven't done it for a long time, and it's fun, right? I might not have ever done this one. I never did. Okay, did you ever buy a book and you never actually did and read the whole thing? I bought this book for, I can't remember why, for 1 or 2 activities in it because of a group I was teaching something, and I used those couple of activities and I never looked at all the others until I knew I was going to do this challenge, and I was like, what things would really help me? I tell them, I want to improve and be better off at the end of this month than I was at the beginning, just like everybody else participating in the challenge. So I grabbed a couple of resources that I've had for a long time. One I've used and I've gone through extensively, but I think it's at a different level of spiritual and personal development than maybe a lot of people are. And if it's right for you and you feel inclined, you'll get that and you'll go through that resource. If it's not, then I don't want to force that on anyone else. It's like forcing your religion and your beliefs and your personal faith on anybody else. It's not for me to do. It's for each and every one of us to go on our own journey and discover what is right for you, what is right for me. So we will do this little repeat yourself, life is not an emergency exercise. And like I said, it says there's one on traffic, there's one on finish reading library books so you can return them on time. I occasionally panic when I feel too much work to do. I seldom worry about April 15th tax deadline. Well, that's been extended, so nobody's really probably worrying about that right now. What do you do if your washing machine breaks down? Things like that we often, or you break a window, or your car won't start. I don't even know if those are on here. but there's just a couple in-laws called from the airport and said they're showing up, or can you pick them up at the airport? And how we would look at these things. So I think it's a fun exercise. It's an important exercise. And my question for you today really is, and what our that's not even our assignment today. That's just an activity for personal growth and development and kind of for fun. Because my question is then, based on our lives right now, is there, or do you feel differently about, and do you feel differently now about your life and if things are an emergency or not today versus how you felt a few weeks ago? Since COVID-19 has impacted all of our lives and changed what we're doing right now, do you feel differently about different areas of your life? How about your job? Do you feel differently? And if you're at home if you're at home working, how do you feel about your job now? Do you like it better because you're at home working, or do you like it just as little as you did when you were at the office working with other people? Sometimes it's just the environment that needs to change, and we actually love the work we're doing, but we don't like the environment and the people that we're surrounded with. So maybe that tells us, hey, I might want to continue working, but while I'm working here at home, I'm going to look for other opportunities, other environments where I might fit better. If your business is shut down or if your business is cranking, ask yourself, how do I feel right now about my business? And if it's shut down, definitely be asking yourself these questions and be taking steps to decide what and how do I want to change my business going forward so I feel awesome about it. So I feel like I am doing what I originally intended when I started this business in the first place. Or if your business is cranking, how am I feeling about my business? Am I feeling a little stressed and overwhelmed at all the changes and all the things that we need to do and protecting my employees and making sure they're safe and all the questions that arise out of that? How are you feeling about that? And how did you feel a few weeks ago about that? I guarantee a few weeks ago, there's things on my radar that I never even thought or gave two blinks about in the past, especially with respect to making sure my kids were safe and my teams were protected and things like that are at the utmost in the top of my list right now as things I need to make sure are covered and that I take care of. So our assignment today is to share in the comments below one thing that you feel differently about than you did before this COVID-19 pandemic started. What is one thing, and please don't say toilet paper. I know everybody wants to say toilet paper, and somebody's going to comment toilet paper, I'm pretty sure. But what is one thing that you feel differently about than you did before this? Maybe it's your relationships. Maybe you've really come to appreciate the importance of spending time with your kids and spending time with your significant other, that you valued it, but you weren't really living and paying attention to it and giving them the time and energy that they deserve. They weren't number one in your life. I heard something the other day that says, hey, I'm not my husband's number one customer. I'm not my husband's number one client. And I could really relate to that because I wasn't my husband's number one concern or anything when we were married. And as much as I believed my kids and my ex-husband were my number one concern, if I'm 100% honest, I often put business and work before I put my family. And so even though they're the most important thing in my life, my kids anyway, I didn't always put them first, and I regret that. And I'm glad I have the opportunity to notice and see that and regret that now, because I'm not making the same mistake with my granddaughter. I am dropping everything, the time that I'm spending with my granddaughter now, which is a lot, and I so love it. I love every minute of it, but I'm appreciating that more. So share in the comments below as your action item today. Do the activity because it's fun, and we all need that fun relief, and we need a stress reliever, because as much as we might not realizing it, any type of change causes stress in our lives. So even if we're in a better situation than we were before, it still causes stress, and we want to make sure that we have outlets for that. So just what's one thing that you feel differently about? You might feel better about, you might feel worse about, but you feel differently about. Remember, different can be good or bad about since we started this challenge. Let's say just one thing you feel differently about since April 1st. And it's the 21st today, so it's like a 3-week check. What is one thing you feel differently about? Share in the comments below, and I will, of course, be with you tomorrow with our next step, our next thing to do. Now, do I need to remind you that we're still doing something every day to positively impact and make us feel better about our number one area of emphasis, the number one area of our life that we wanted to make and affect a change in? Physical, mental, emotional, spiritual, financial, relationships, or contribution. Remember, we're still taking one step toward that. And I think tomorrow we'll check back in with that, and we'll talk about where we are. I'm deciding this right now, and what the next step is, because I want to pick at least one more area of your life for us to focus on and help with to the end of the challenge, so that you haven't just addressed one aspect of your life, but you've at least really taken into consideration and gone through the process, the challenge process or the pivot process, whatever you want to call it, for at least 2 key areas of your life, so that you know and internalize how to do it, and you can do it for everything and anything going forward for the rest of your life. Because if you get that skill, if you just adopt that one thing, it will change your life. Have an amazing day. If I can help you in any way, ask in the comments below. Otherwise, I will be with you tomorrow. Bye.